Alright, hello everyone. My name is Disc, and we are about to do a Sanguine Depths 20. We have a pretty strong group overall. We all have high IO, and experience is ultimately what carried us through this dungeon. Off the bat, I'm trying to plan where my PIs are going to go. We have a Boomkin, so that's the clear choice for bosses. And we also have a Monk, which is the clear choice for trash. Red Paladin also does really well with PI, and I think he did get it a few times just because of the way the dungeon played out. But this is Tyrannical week. We have Sanguine and Storming, and for Sanguine Depths, Tyrannical is probably the harder week. This was far from a perfect dungeon, but we did have good boss fights. So I think there's a lot we can learn from this. There are a few moments where we can focus on how to recover, and then the boss fights that went well, we can just talk about those as a success. So we are about to get going here, and yeah, Sanguine Depths 20. So on Tyrannical weeks, I think the best approach to the first boss is invis immediately at the start to the first Tormentor, clear ahead of the first Tormentor, and then work backwards to the Lantern to have it immediately going into the first boss, which is the bottleneck of this dungeon. But we went for a more normal strat, sadly. But here we go. I like tossing a Purge the Wicked on these rats in the first room. There's a chance for a proc. I fade here. I don't want to be on the aggro tables. I start getting atonements out because I'm going to go into Boon. And for a trash pull like this, definitely PI the Monk. After's win and before his Bone Dust Brew. And for a pull this large, I'm favoring Nova. I'm trying to build that 99 stack, which we did successfully. And then mine's here. Yeah, look at the numbers. The Monk did really well. Everyone did great. Got an 8 stack of the Lantern buff. That's pretty good. Always lay out a feather for yourself before Invis Pot. It doesn't break the Invis, and priests are really slow. So this pull, pretty easy. Get your dots out. Spread my dot off of the mob with the spectrometer. Always try and keep him targeted first. Get out a Mind Seer for fun. And the best thing I can do here is Radiance right into Rapture. These ticks explode, perfect place to cast Rapture. Lead in with the Radiance because you want the Mastery buff to increase your heals. So this was accidental pull number 1 of the dungeon. So we're going to need the heals here. We do have 3 mobs though, so I get 3 dots out. That'll help pad the HPS. A lot of ground damage to dodge. But just to help us ease into this, I want to lead with a boon for sure. Doing a pretty standard defensive boon where I Radiance between the 4th and the 5th blast. Yeah, so someone missed a kick there, but thanks Dewey for that battle res. Getting atonements out. Getting my dots out. And then I Shadow Fiend Schism. You always want to refresh your dots before going into a Schism window. You don't want to break from Schism. You want it to be straight offensive spells if you can. And you don't want dots falling off in that window. That's going to be a little bit of a loss for you. So, we did make it through, but having one of our DPS gone for half the fight is a little bit more of a loss than we would have liked this early in, but we recovered. And then this next pull, last pull before boss, is a little bit harder. But I go ahead and dot everybody. I get out a pain sup on the tank just for a second. I refresh his atonement. Everyone's dotted, and I go into a boon. And with the boss next, I'm favoring trying to get all my seconds back from this. So, favoring Nova. I believe that was almost a 99 stack. And I got full return on my cooldown. I could Radiance those explosions, but... I'm sorry, I could Rapture those, but I am trying to kind of hold on to cooldowns for our boss. So I just healed through it. Alright, and our first boss... It's so much more fun when you have the lantern buff, but we did not play that strat. But we do have a Boomkin, so we're going to let the Boomkin pretty much win the fight for us. Great PI target. The best way to maximize a Celestial alignment is PI about 4 to 5 seconds delayed. They'll get more damage that way. The group was really healthy overall there, so I didn't want to use a cooldown. Not yet. But I do know this first orb phase will be my first boon. I pre-atone everybody, and I'm trying to stay in melee range here. The way this fight works on Tyrannical is we need our boon one more time before the fight's over. So, I have to stay in melee there, because if my Novas aren't hitting the boss, I'm going to be losing a lot of return on my cooldown, and it'll put us in a pinch we don't want to find ourselves in at the end of the fight. Threw in a barrier there last second for the coverage. I request Innervate, getting a completely free Rapture here. And that is the best way to maximize Rapture. You want half of the cooldown in front of the slam, and then half of the cooldown after the slam. Most scenarios where you're using Rapture, that is the best play. You want to aim for half in front, half after. Used a potion there, I wasn't sure if my health was enough. But the fight is getting a little bit near the end, so using a potion isn't a bad idea. So Shadow Fiend here is so useful. It's a longer buff than Schism, so leading into the orb phase, I preemptively used my Shadow Fiend to top the group, and then when we entered the orb phase, I Schismed to amplify the Shadow Fiend for the orb explosions. You want to try and overlay it just like that. And we're going into the last orb phase. People should know not to pop the orbs here, we're just going to kind of kite. But nevertheless, a lot of orbs are popped. But we have Boon just in time, and that's all we need. I toss a Radiance early in the Boon just for the coverage. Boss is dead. Didn't fully need boon, but I had no mana and nothing else, so boon for the win. Throw out a feather for our tank there. He's going to rally up the pole in front of us. This isn't too hard of a pull, especially on Tyrannical weeks. I don't have much but PI, and I threw it on the Druid a little hastily. For a trash pull like this, the Monk would have been a better choice for the AoE. Moreover, the Druid should have held his cooldown here. He did not have a good play any of this dungeon when you analyze his cooldowns. Yeah, that was definitely overkill with the Monk popping, me popping, and the Druid popping. It was too much. A much better play from our Druid would be to Celestial Alignment here. With this guy, you just want to DPS as much as you can while not getting hit. For the most part, Atonement will heal the that target plenty. Sometimes I use a defensive penance on the target, but Atonement does really good there. It's usually more than enough, well, depending on the level key. I went for the food buff here, even though we had a Druid, and it came in handy later. So give some feathers for our tank who's rounding up again. Give him a grip too for fun. And this is a pretty large pull, boons available, so that's perfect. So as those little sprites are entering, the tank doesn't really have aggro on them yet, and I'm in boon, so that's a great way to die. What I did is faded right as they were entering. It was in the middle of boon, but fade has no global cooldown, so I have that on a really accessible keybind and can find it at any moment and pop it really quickly. Great spell, Fade. I try and preemptively feather before that. It helps break the chains quicker. If this were fortified, definitely cover the group with a Rapture before that attack, but no need when they're this weak. Preemptively Fade. Tab target back over to the spectrometer to spread the last dot. Yeah, I dot the first, dot the second, and then penance the first. That spreads the dot to the third. So I was in boon. I was about to erupt. I didn't want to exit and have that attack not land, so I just kept myself atoned and healed through it until the eruption went off. So that was a perfect cage activation right at the end of their health pools. Mana's fine. Feather the tank to help him get into position quicker. Fade and start healing. Very important you get through cage pulls with everyone alive. So defensively I'm rapturing to cover the group. Drop Pain Sup as well. And PI is great for that pull too, to make sure they all die while the cage is active. Went to our monk there. Yeah, he popped off. Look at the meters. PI for the win. Feather the tank, because I like him. And here the monk didn't notice this was a skip and literally just like face pulled. But I exited and faded immediately. I did not engage. So this is where things start going downhill for us. And it's the worst place to start losing a grip on things because we're in the middle of the dungeon. But we have mass res. We're doing fine on time, so it's okay. Give him a new fortitude, and this is a substantial pull. So I start my ramp with a Shadow Mend first. We want 2 atonements out in the same global. And then I enter boon, damage as much as I can. Yep. I weaved in a Radiance between my 4th and 5th blast. You always want to weave in spells between the blasts. Usually that's going to be a Radiance, but sometimes it needs to be other spells, like a shield or a penance. Always weave between the blasts. So that was unfortunate. I watched this on replay, and I think the Druid somehow pulled in the Custodian, who we did not want here. So accidental pull number 2. Got hit with that tornado, and then my big toe touched Sanguine and I died, but quick battle res saved the day. Thankfully we have boon coming up right now, just in time to save this pull. And this was a very defensive boon. Reatoned the group with a Radiance between the 4th and 5th blast. The reason I wait between the 4th and 5th blast is because at that point Schism has faded. We don't want to interrupt from Schism either. Yeah, I had no mana, so thankfully Innervate came in just the nick of time, and I just straight Shadowman spammed our tank. And then our Druid wants to play with that tornado. So I think we only had 1 death, and it was myself. But it was a pretty effective pull. But we did use our last battle res, it looks like. Yeah, that patrol was getting pretty close to our tank. I wasn't sure if he saw, so I gripped him away. So there's our crit buff. That's really good. Quick drink for the win. Full mana. Took about 2 seconds. Go ahead and fade at the top of this because our tank honestly just body pulled. He didn't really attack anything yet. But this is a lantern pull, so we're going to need a lot of cooldowns here. Drop PI on our monk for the fun of it. He's really good at AoE trash pulls. I toned the whole group and have a really nice boon there. Yeah, my camera angle was kind of bad there. I face pulled that patrol, but we did need it for this lantern, so the best thing you can do in a situation like that is fade instantly and run, which is what you saw me do. I just went completely opposite everyone else in the group. I have that weak aura in the middle of my screen tracking the cage activation. It's a minute cooldown, and I find it useful, or at least I like to know its duration, so there's a weak aura for that. And that was a 7 stack, doing good. So now while everyone is empowered, it's also good to try and not have deaths here. I fade. I don't want to be on the aggro pool. And out of this whole group, I know that the Sentinel is the meanest guy here, and he has the most health. So I make sure he has my Spectrometer. I also give him my Schism, and he's the focused of my Ascended Blasts. Trying to get him down. Pretty much no one was atoned there. That was very aggressive. So with this lantern, we are going to do a work back strategy. So we're going to lantern immediately before the boss. That's what we should have done first boss. But you'll see how that goes this time. So Tank is going ahead to rally our pull. I'm laying him down a trail of feathers just to help his positioning. And I feel like I should retreat for a second just to not get smacked in the face. So I run away, I'm faded. And this is going to be a pretty manual pull for the whole group. Boss is next, so no one's wanting to use cooldowns. And you'll see the Druid here. I would say that's a slight mistake. He activated our lantern when our pull was above 50%. It was probably more like 65%. And the reason I call that a mistake is because we do lose 2 stacks because of his early activation. You want to activate late in the pull, after the halfway mark for sure. He just did it a little too early. Druid got chained. The Paladin and I both reacted there. He did a Blessing of Freedom and I gripped. I think he was in Sanguine, that's why I gripped. But so you'll see here, looking at the cage timer, it ran out, and those 2 guys were still alive. So instead of a 6 stack, we had a 4 stack going into a hard boss. But we played it fine. PI's up, going to the Druid, waiting for a small delay before I buff him. So this first ad phase, everyone is in their cooldown window, so that ad is going to die quickly. There's no reason to pop a healer defensive there. It's always good too to kind of maintain a spread here. You'll notice everyone's grouped and that's not good for that attack. But here comes the second ad phase, which is where I'm going to boon. I get targeted, which is a problem. So a very defensive way to play boon is in between your blasts, work in a Shadow Mend. So there I saved my life with a blast, Shadow Mend, blast. I don't want to break from boon, but it's a life or death scenario there. Great way to play this fight is always spread your dot with penance. So that's about all I do on the ad, to be honest. I don't want to put my schism on him because I'm probably going to lose value. So I just schismed the boss and let my dot spread to him that way, and I consider that my all I'm going to do for the ad. Alright, here we're in the next boss room. Usually you can get in a PI in the room before the boss, but we were getting through this stuff pretty quickly, and I did not want to chance PI being down at the start of the boss, so I did opt to hold.
Beware. You approach a powerful servant of the jailer.
I really do love the drink power. So lately I've been favoring Holy Nova in those grips. You can kind of pre-cast it while you're being gripped in the air. So I just spam it as I'm getting gripped in. We have the improved Holy Nova now, so we get more output because of the chains. And since you can cast it while moving, I kind of just hold W facing out so that I immediately start exiting from the ground damage once the chains are free. You can always re-dot as you're exiting, or maybe throw a shadow word death. You can solace penance as you're exiting. I guess really anything. Looks like I wanted to mind suit the boss. Get in a full drink here. Druid is ready. PI is ready. Give him a 5-second delay about, and then drop PI. So the way I play this is boon is first. I'm going to try and get at least 3 orbs, and I'm also going to go ahead and shield. The lenience talent will reduce all damage by 3%. It's good to use that there. There's a short window before the ground damage where you just basically want to spam Shadow Mend. You're trying to get everyone as topped as possible before the dance. And with full, fresh atonements. So, at the last second you schism, and then boon, and dance around. On this one I request Innervate, and this is my Rapture phase. Rapture before the blast, and Rapture after the blast. And then last second here, you want to schism, and dance. The Druid ate some ground damage over there, I believe. But we have a res on him. God, we sure use our reses this dungeon. There is a dot that goes out on this boss. Always good to give a little love to the person with that dot. So also on this boss, yep, I barrier. I saw Dewfoot, our Druid, way out, in the outfield. Grip has no global cooldown, so always grip people into your barrier. It's a great play. And then I Shadow Fiend there too. So We have PI a second time. This boss is no joke. We definitely want to use it on the Paladin. He's going to be better single target than the monk. So drop PI, getting off as many Shadowmens as possible. And this is a really defensive boon. I'm not in melee range, so I'll blast Penance, blast Solace. You don't have to use Nova. And in a scenario like that where I was not close to the boss, you just want to weave in your typical spells in between your blasts. And also for this fight, I consider Pain Sup my spell. So I pretty much use that to protect myself if there's a phase where I don't collect enough shield orbs, because I just need to live through it. I think I'm easier to die than other classes, so if I can live, that's all we need. You want to Mind Sear this pack. It's a mix of elites and non-elites, so Mind Sear for some DPS. And this is when I noticed we have a problem. So I was requesting Innervate that last boss from our Druid, and he didn't see it. So in a pinch, I used a potion, not remembering that we have a skip right here. So I wish I was able to catch it on camera, but you can Mind Soothe this group, Fade, Feather, and jump between their hitboxes. I've done it before. We have no potions, so we're going for it, and I messed it up. But it's possible. It's possible, but we have a res. If only the Druid had given me that Innervate. And then we have a pretty clean gauntlet. You want to open with Boon, it's available. Go ahead and get the cooldown refreshed. And this is a large pack. So to go for the 99 stack, I'm going to favor Nova here. I think I work in a few blasts, just because I need some heals. Gave PI to the Druid there. He did really well with it that time. Oh, the monk didn't have all his CDs. Yeah, so in that case where the monk only has one of his 2 CDs, that's why I gave it to the Druid. Fade's your friend. There was another Fade to drop aggro. And this is a Lantern Pulse, so we got to play really carefully. Getting a Mind Sear out to get those little cadets. They can hurt the tank. And it's always good to precast a heal before the squall hits. So right there, the group was already atoned, so I didn't Radiance, but I did precast the Schism, which is a nice heal. And we got, I think we got a 10 stack here. Yeah, 10 stacks, that's great. Punt those guys away. It looked like they were on me. Yeah, they are on me. So single target like that, you favor the blast. So you keep blast on cooldown, that's every other. For this one I precast Radiance. Next round. Pain Sup is always good there for the tank when the Sentinel leaves the dot behind. It's a nice way to kind of cancel out that effect. It can hurt. So we have Boon again, just to make sure we get through. We all have our Lantern buff. Fully cover the group with atonements. And go into a strong Boon. So it's never good in the hallway or the boss fight to stack with your party members. That attack can hit more than one person if you're too close to each other. For the boss too. Precast Radiance there. And this was another error on the Druid's fault. The final boss of the dungeon is pretty much in the next room. He knows he's my PI target, and he uses his 3-minute cooldown when there's not enough time for it to cool down. Pretty much out of mana. When that happens, you always want to rely on Penance as a defensive heal. It's one of your cheaper heals. It has good return on it. So using it defensively is great. But combat finally dropped. Sat down for a quick drink. Thankfully to that power. I'm full mana. And this is a Mindseer group. The majority are non-elites. So Mindseer for the damage. Go ahead and get them down. So I only cast one dot this whole pull, but if you notice, I target the enemy with the greater duration dot and penance him so that it spreads to the weaker one. Kept it alive the whole pull. That's kind of what you want to do. It's a skill all on its own, dotting as a disciplined priest. You always want to use penance to your advantage to spread your dot. Saves a global, and it's cheaper in mana. So here we have Lust. Druid is not ready for PI. I decide to PI the monk. I want my PI target to also have Lust. But I guess I should have PI'd the Paladin. Yeah. I hold Boon until that first attack there. You want Boon to kind of overlap before the attack and after the attack. Almost died there, but I did use Wall. A better play would be to have Shadow Fiend rolling before the attack, and then Schism your Shadow Fiend after the attack. Yeah, my play was a little wonky, which is why a couple of our health spiked low. For this I Rapture, and that was a lot better than the last round where I want half my Rapture in front of the attack and half my Rapture after the attack to refresh my absorbs. PI's up for a second time. I'm waiting for someone to queue, and this time I gave it to the Paladin, which is what I should have done the first time. I'm sure he likes it. Trying to top everyone up before this attack. I use Innervate here to refresh everyone's atonement, and I go into another boon. Pretty much just a straight offensive boon. I didn't break from it once. Alright, there we have it. So that was a Sanguine Depths 20. We have a minute 36 to spare. And we pretty much just muscled our way through that one. Any average pug group probably would have not been able to recover from those areas, but Discipline has a lot of great recovery spells, and if you replay a couple of those areas where things went awry, hopefully you can take away from it quick ways you can recover and how your UI can help you recover by tracking your absorbs properly. Also, I think there were a few good examples that showed how PI really ensured a poll success. So you have to lean on that. That's one of your biggest utility spells, and it can really work in your favor if you time it perfectly, trying to optimize it the best you can and maximize it. And I do hope to I will post another Sanguine Depths in the future. I want one with a little bit better of a play just to show you how a successful run goes, but I do think there's something to learn from failed polls. So we made it through, no full wipes. Our overall DPS was pretty good, and yep, if you notice the avoidable damage, you'll see the priest right there on the bottom. That's something that I really recommend every priest get really good at, is avoiding damage anywhere and everywhere you can. You're considered to be a little bit more squishy, so you definitely have to avoid damage where you can. That's a skill every player should develop, but the better you can do that, the better your healing will be and the better player you'll be. So until next time, guys, Disc out.